Afternoon, the government is promising to protect workers on zero-hours contracts by making it illegal for firms to prevent them seeking work with other companies. Ministers believe that about 125,000 people who aren't guaranteed set hours each week are tied into this type of contract. Rob Johnston is from the Midlands TUC, told this programme they welcome the changes.
We would hope so. I mean, one of the changes the government could introduce right now, very small second step, if you like, would be to guarantee workers 5-6 hours a week, because we've seen too many rogue employers of people 1 hour per week, 0-hour contracts. I mean, it is just ridiculous. It benefits nobody except those rogue employers. Not one person I've ever met has requested to go from a permanent contract to a 0-hours contract.
Let's bring in Matt Jenkins, an employment solicitor from Worcester-based law practice Harrison Clark Rickerbys. Hi, Matt.
Hi there.
So, what do these changes mean for employees?
For employees, those who are on 0-hours contracts, there's a small percentage of those who've been subject to what's called exclusivity clauses, which means although they're guaranteed no hours from their employer, they're not permitted to go and seek work elsewhere, which I think for most employees, and indeed for most employers, they would just see that as an abuse of the process. And so they're going to ban the use of exclusivity clauses in those 0-hours contracts completely.
So does that make it more difficult for employers then to actually employ people on these contracts because they might have gone and found work elsewhere when they're actually needed?
Not necessarily. I've got to say my experience of 0-hours contracts is I haven't come across really any employers that want to include exclusivity arrangements. And I think whilst there's some rogue employers out there, I don't think fundamentally it's going to change certainly how a lot of the clients I deal with look at how they use their 0-hours contracts.
OK, so do you think many people would be affected by this? Is this, I mean, a 0-hours contract more common than we might think?
Yeah, the latest statistics, they're thinking probably there's about 1.4 million workers who are engaged in some form of 0-hours contract. Statistics on this are notoriously unreliable, and they keep going up pretty rapidly every time someone does a survey. I think a lot of that perhaps is as people become more aware as what 0-hours contracts are, people are recognising perhaps they're employed on them. But there's certainly a large number of workers out there who are on them. Probably about, they think, 125,000 of those people have exclusivity clauses in their contract. So, there's still a small percentage, perhaps, of the total users.
Could this be the start of a wider change to this type of contract?
I don't think so. There's been a large campaign to ban the use of 0-hours contracts outright. But when the government was consulting on these changes, they made it clear they weren't really looking at a complete ban. They see the benefits for employers and employees and the flexibility that it brings. So I think a ban is highly unlikely. Certainly I don't see it based on the latest proposals. That's really in the government's thinking at all.
OK, thank you. Matt Jenkins, employment solicitor from Worcester-based law practice Harrison Clark Rickerbys.
Andrew Easton.